It could be the last warning to the United States. Either it accepts multipolarity or faces a future of isolation. While Washington clings to its old scheme of domination, emerging powers advance, reshaping the global board. The era of solitary hegemonies is over. The influence of Russia, China, and other actors grows unchecked, while the West's resistance only accelerates its decline. Lavrov has made it clear, imposition and aggression are no longer viable in this new world order. The United States is against the wall. The challenge presents an inescapable ultimatum. In a forceful statement, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov put forth a proposal that, according to him, Washington cannot afford to ignore. The world is undergoing a major transformation, and Lavrov left no room for doubt. The era of a single dominant power has come to an end. In his view, the United States must accept that it now shares the global stage with Russia, China, and other emerging powers from all corners of the planet. Washington's actions, according to Lavrov, are reminiscent of the Old West, where the law of the strongest imposed its will without question. For the Russian diplomat, this aggressive policy is doomed to failure in a world where strategic alliances have changed the rules of the game. International diplomacy can no longer operate under the same frameworks of past decades. Lavrov insisted that it is crucial to reformulate the mechanisms governing international relations, adapting them to a context of multipolarity that is now impossible to reverse. Russia presents itself as the voice of reason in this new scenario. Lavrov emphasized that the only way to build a stable world is through cooperation and mutual respect, revealing that policies of confrontation only fuel chaos and global instability. Moscow's warnings are not new. In previous articles published in Russia in Global Affairs, Lavrov had already warned about the dangerous advance of Washington in Eastern Europe, identifying it as a key factor in the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. The decisions made by the West, according to Lavrov, were like a spark igniting a powder keg. The expansion led by the United States after the fall of the Soviet Union not only ignored calls for prudence, but also forced Russia to take decisive measures to defend its security. Instead of acting wisely, the West was driven by unchecked ambition. Lavrov recalled how, in the 1990s, then U.S. President George H.W. Bush proclaimed a new world order based on the absolute dominance of the United States, never imagining that, decades later, that framework would collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. What was once presented as the beginning of absolute dominance is now seen as the dawn of a fading illusion. The United States' ambition to establish itself as the sole dominant actor in global geopolitics has ultimately clashed with a far more complex reality. The consequences of that gamble have become increasingly evident over time. According to Lavrov, Washington's interventionist strategy has only accelerated its own decline, pushing entire regions such as Eastern Europe into a scenario of tensions and conflicts that could have been avoided. The world has changed, but some refuse to accept it. Lavrov's criticism centers on this resistance to evolving perspectives based on obsolete power models that ignore the diversity and complexity of the global landscape. A single hegemony is no longer viable, and those who fail to grasp this will be left behind. The numbers don't lie. While the United States clings to its old domination scheme, emerging powers have gained ground with rapid growth and an increasingly decisive presence in international forums and strategic alliances. The inevitable is already happening. The only realistic option for Washington is to accept its role in a world where power is distributed among multiple centers of influence. Lavrov was blunt in stating that insisting on old tactics, such as military interventions disguised as humanitarian missions, is not only ineffective but also increases instability and the risk of global conflicts. For Russia, the only sensible path is dialogue. Lavrov's warning is far from a mere provocation. It is a wake-up call to those who still believe they can impose their will without consequences. Join Russia or be left behind is more than just a threat. It is a reflection of a new world order where cooperation is not an option but a necessity. The West's actions do not hold up against the facts. What was once justified as an expansion to bring democracy and freedom to Eastern Europe is, according to Lavrov, the very spark that ignited the tensions currently afflicting the region. The conflict in Ukraine was no coincidence. From the Russian perspective, it was a response to a power game that Washington stretched too far, ignoring warnings and the geopolitical realities of the region. The outcome had long been written, and now the world is facing its consequences. The world stands at a crossroads. Russia has presented a clear alternative to reshaping the global order and preventing confrontation from spiraling out of control. In his statement, Lavrov exposed Washington's obstinacy in the face of this new reality. For Moscow, multipolarity is not a theory or a wish, but an unavoidable fact. However, the United States insists on clinging to its former role as the sole dominator, resorting to imposition and aggression as tools to maintain its influence, an approach that, according to Lavrov, is not only obsolete but also destined to spark even larger conflicts. The global balance can no longer depend on the will of a single nation. Lavrov underscores that the only viable path to stability is recognizing that global power must be fairly distributed among multiple actors, each with a voice and a vote in international decisions. The difference between these two positions is stark. While the West continues to discredit Russia and label its actions as aggressive, Lavrov shifts the focus to the real issue: the stubbornness of a hegemony that refuses to accept that the world no longer revolves around it. This is not an improvised proposal, but a well-documented reality. The assertion that the United States, from a historical perspective, could become one of several centers of power alongside Russia, China, and other rising nations is a direct warning about the course Washington must take if it does not want to be left behind. Moscow's message leaves no room for ambiguity. Lavrov makes it clear that this is a unique opportunity for the United States to abandon its old strategies and adapt to the new global scenario. Ignoring these changes will only lead to its progressive isolation on the international stage. The numbers speak for themselves. While Washington persists in its model of domination, emerging economies have grown by leaps and bounds, diversifying their alliances and consolidating a new power structure that exposes the decline of American hegemony. There is no turning back. The era of absolute dominance is over, and the only viable path forward is a model that allows for the peaceful coexistence of multiple powers. Lavrov warned in no uncertain terms, resisting this transformation will only lead to more chaos and disorder. The world has changed, but will the United States accept it? What do you think about this global transformation? Are we witnessing the end of the absolute dominance of the West? Leave us your comment and join the conversation. Subscribe for more analysis on current geopolitics, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our new videos. See you in the next analysis.